We've hit the official start time, but we will, as usual, wait a few minutes for people to join. The join rate's currently very high. If you're able to share video, please do so, but remember the session is being recorded and will appear on YouTube later. There is a link to the document that we are using as an agenda and notes in the chat. If you're not familiar with this format of the document, we use it every month. Add yourself to the participant list. That would save others that are helping us take notes from having to do so for you. The join rate is beginning to slow down. We'll start in a minute or so. For those that have just joined, please share video if you're willing. Remember that the session is being recorded and will appear on YouTube. All right, our join rate is now slow enough that I think we should start. Thanks everyone for taking time to join these sessions. They're very important to us, very helpful in helping us to coordinate what we're doing and make sure that we're focusing on the right things. The notes document linked in the chat has today's agenda. If anyone has any topics that they would like to add, let me know. If there's any agenda bashing, we tend not to run a queue during these calls. If someone has something that they would like to add, just jump in. If we have a topic that becomes heated enough that we need a queue, I'll ask that we start a queue at that time. Otherwise, just jump in when you're ready to ask something or make a comment. I want to remind people at the beginning of the call the bigger scope, the bigger picture of what we're working on. The tools have been focusing on migrating infrastructure for a very long time. And while we're nearer the end of the large infrastructure migrations, we've got a few that are still in progress and that need to finish very soon. In particular, the work on modernizing the RFC Production Center's tools is high priority at the moment. We're in a race against the appearance of the first RFC with a 5-digit RFC number, the RFC 10K problem. We also have great deal of extremely aging infrastructure that the RPC is working on that we are replacing with modern tools. It's a fairly large project. We are making rapid progress on it now, While we are doing that at the moment, we're also focusing on the data tracker's performance, utilizing blob storage to accelerate the delivery of content to people and improving the data tracker's reliability as we do so, because we can spread a lot of the load closer to the edge while we're doing this. We recently made a decision to move our primary production services into Azure. That's been going on. It is complete for all of the services except for the ones that are tied together currently by the file systems. That's being Data Tracker, Mail Archive, and IMAP, rsync. Those services we plan to transition just after IETF 123. We're holding off to make that transition just to minimize disruption on the upcoming meeting. We're also focusing on making progress on several feature requests that have been put on hold for a long time while we were dealing with the larger infrastructure transitions. Notably those to support the ISG with insight into various metrics that the ISG wants to study, and a rewrite of the IAB liaison management tooling. There's significant work going in still to the mail system, stabilizing it and putting it in a condition where we can make bigger changes going forward. And we're finalizing the IDNets rewrite for IDNets 3. We'll be talking more about that in a moment. Before we jump into the details on the running train, does anybody have any questions or comments about the big picture that we're working towards? All right. I'm going to do a last-minute agenda bash just because I expect the video streaming conversation to take quite a long time. I'd like to focus on the rest of the agenda first and take the video streaming conversation at the end so it can consume however much time we have left. I'll note before we get into that we are making sure that we have copies of all of the video content somewhere other than YouTube. We have multiple copies of all of the Metacode generated content already. One of our long-term recovery strategy is to put this content into cool storage in Azure. We're making sure that the non-Metacode generated content is there as well, but that's still in progress. IDNets 3 is very close to beta. We have one more issue that we want to iron out of it. It's currently saying a lot about token.token interpreting token.token as a domain name and complaining about it where it shouldn't. When we move that out of the way as noise, we'll ask the community to do a strong review of it in preparation for it becoming the thing that is in front of ID submission. Anyone that's willing to make comments earlier, forgiving the fact that it is still a little bit noisy about things like the domain name checks. Please feel free to do so. Links are in the notes. We've had a conversation here several times in the past about redirecting the current links at www.ietf.org/RSC into rsceditor.org, so that the rsceditor.org domain is serving RFCs. We are proposing that we go ahead and take action on that relatively soon before the next tools call. We just wanted to get any feedback if anybody had any concerns about us putting these redirects in place. I will note that just as a coincidence of timing, the RFC editor org origins are a little bit less powerful than the www.ietf.org origin. So we'll have to watch carefully what that's going to mean in terms of load on the server. But these particular assets, the ones we're talking about redirecting, we cache heavily. So I'm not expecting it to be a large impact. The next thing we had under hot topics was we've for a long time had XML to RFC generating a document that talks about its own vocabulary. Basically, it's a source of the JSCUNQ, I'm sorry.
So, sorry, I just want to go back to ID NITS 3.
And I can't hear you.
Now
I can.
Okay, good. Just going back to ID NITS 3, can we confirm ID NITS 2 worked only on plain text internet drafts? Does ID NITS 3 only also work on plain text internet drafts?
ID NITS 3 works both on plain text and on XML.
Right, okay.
And it takes advantage of the structure of the XML in preparing its reports.
Okay, great. I think we need to add that just to the documentation because people, that's an unknown otherwise.
All right. So where I was starting to go with the XML to RFC vocabulary, RFC XML's definitive vocabulary has basically been moved into, well, has been moved into authors.ietf.org. The repository for XML to RFC has a link to the documentation for the grammar that XML to RFC reports out of its own internals. We're planning on turning that generation off and as feasible, because there's some challenges given that we were using GitHub.io to serve this, redirecting these things back into authors.ietf.org. Just wanted to call attention to that in case anyone had concerns.
A quick question. Does it mean that that will be a static resource on authors.ietf.org, or will it still be generated from the actual code?
It is not generated content. It's human curated content on authors.
Okay, so we need to maintain that actively then.
Yeah, so it is. When that vocabulary page was written, it was based on the output of XML to RFC, but then substantially enhanced on top of that. So the what's generated by XML to RFC is not enough to maintain that page there. But yes, it is maintained. The biggest difficulty we had in the past was that there were rapid vocabulary changes without the sort of level of community input that I think people had been used to, and so that the XML to RFC was literally the only way people could find out what had happened. We don't have that process anymore. We have a managed process for those, so that will end up with anything then being reflected correctly on the author's website.
So the rest of the notes, the rest of the agenda, other than the topic on video streaming, which we'll come back to in a moment, we usually take as read. We're 15 minutes into the call. If there are questions or if there are things in the FYI section or the development project reports that people would like to call particular attention to, please do so now. Hey, Roman, just jump in, please.
I just wanted to jump in to say kind of thank you for the tools team for beginning to re-engage on some of the ISG features for the data tracker. It's going to be very helpful to have, so I'm excited to see those features roll into production. Thanks for the support.
Awesome.
I just wanted to highlight a couple things from the mail archive. There were a number of changes since the last call. Just quickly, we've done a round of improvements of a set of the poorest performing queries in the archive. We've also restricted the export feature of messages to logged in sessions. And one other change, we've refactored the private list access to incorporate any emails that Data Tracker has associated with your account. If they have been used to subscribe to a private list, then you should have access now to that content of that private list. So just to highlight those changes since the last call.
I guess I'd like to point out something on the data tracker. So we brought up last time that we're going to start enforcing password strength requirements. I think what's going to end up happening is next week or so, we're going to roll out the change that we promised, which will, when you log in with a fresh session, it will evaluate whether your password is meeting the current requirements, and if not, prompt you to go through a password reset dance, which will involve answering an email. Our hope is that will be, give people a couple of weeks before the busy week before 123 to hopefully go through that update. I expect everyone is, of course, using secure, strong passwords, so most people won't even notice, but that is coming, and if people have concerns about the timing, we'd like to hear about it. But
and I have one other data tracker related thing. As we're making progress towards blob storage, we have a fairly big infrastructure change that we plan to deploy later this week that won't have any effect on the user experience. We're still on in the phase where we're proving that the management of the blob stored artifacts is behaving the way we expect. This deployment's making a fairly large change. It's moving the plumbing for getting the artifacts into the blob storage into an asynchronous process and changing the definition of where the authoritative store lives back into something that is directly attached to the data tracker. This deploy brings new infrastructure pieces, so it might take a few minutes longer. Our recent deploys have gone by in seconds, to the point where quite frequently they're not even noticed by the vast majority of the community. This one's going to involve some manual checking that the new components are behaving as expected. So it might run into a small number of minutes. We don't expect it to be tens of minutes. We expect it to be a single digit of. So we're expecting that to happen late Thursday. So Anyone else have anything they want to call out from the notes before we start discussing the video streaming question?
Jennifer, could you go back to the topic you brought up about resets pre 123? I didn't hear the sequencing right there.
So I guess the plan. So I think toward the end of next week, I think was our plan as far as the timing for a release, which will require the password resets for people using poor passwords, and that leaves about, I think it's either 3 or 4 weeks before the draft submission deadline. So, and anyone who's logging in regularly will see their session timeout. At least 2 weeks is how often you need to re-authenticate, I believe. So.
Yes, so that was the population size was the question I have. So we have run some analysis of the passwords we have. So how do we get the weak password? What is the size of the data tracker population that has weak passwords that are going to get reset?
Well, so the only way to know that would be to crack our password database, which we haven't done because we don't have.
Right. So that's what I was misunderstanding. I was hearing that only people with weak passwords are doing this. What we're saying is everyone's getting a password reset.
So everyone's will get their password tested. The data tracker sees that password in clear text when people log in.
Right.
If it is strong enough to pass the metrics, nothing will happen.
I see.
If it does not satisfy the proposed metrics, which we are still working out the final details of, then they will be asked to do a reset.
They will be asked to do this, or they will be forced?
They'll be required to do it.
Required to do that. Okay. And then I likely missed this too. Is there a communication plan on that's getting dropped somewhere to everyone? And where are we dropping it?
So there will be. We're going to work with Greg and the powers that be, I guess, is the plan.
Okay. Thanks.
So it's the kind of thing that we can use the announcement feature that we added to the data tracker to have it just appear as a header on, the data tracker when people are just browsing, right? The reason that we wanted to talk about it on this call and to talk about the timing is that we're trying to get this far enough in front of the draft submission deadline that we don't have those few people who are still submitting using the web form instead of using the API automation, fighting with getting a login so they can do their draft submission at the 23:59 point on the draft against that draft submission deadline. We definitely want to get it in before the draft submission deadline because that will drive it such that we don't have as many people fighting this at the 23:59 minute before they try to get into their first session at IETF 123.
Understood. Thanks for the clarity.
Cool. All right. So over the last couple of weeks, there's been quite a bit of email traffic about video streaming, driven by some people that were running into changes in the way YouTube was gating access to the content, requiring a login, speculatively driven by YouTube's attempting to control automated access to the streams, but it doesn't really matter. We know that we want to provide additional access to the video content in a streaming form. And we've been looking for ways to do this for some time. So it's driven the conversation forward, which is good. We have some metrics that are captured in the notes for how much content we currently have. The search that we've been performing to date, and we continue to plan to do so, is to look for a service that someone is operating as opposed to building out our own service. I know there's some inside the community suggestions. There are suggestions that we could also have content on volunteer services, things brought up on PeerTube, or perhaps injected into some BitTorrent service. We're going, gathering the contents from the comments from the community, the things that people would like to see. We're talking with different potential providers like Cloudflare Stream. I think the way I'll leave it before we open this up to general conversation is that the goal is to make sure that the content is as available as we can make it, and that we have it.
Can I just jump in, Robert?
Yeah, please do so.
So if we look on the notes, everyone, under video streaming, you'll see a series of bullet points where it says the discussion on list has suggested that we. So these are the basic requirements that we want to make sure that you're all comfortable with. So no third-party login. First of all, just to be clear, we're talking about adding to YouTube. We're not talking about replacing YouTube. The point, of course, is to disseminate these videos as widely as possible, so as many services as possible will support that. And so I'll leave you to read the rest of them, but just want to make sure that you're comfortable with these, whether we've got these right, and then move on to the other part of the conversation as well.
Paul, do you have access to audio? Do you want me to relay your chat comments?
I think I have access. Do I?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Okay. Yeah, I can just so regarding to the video, I was videos being hosted elsewhere. I was wondering what the potential cost would be for that, because if we're somehow self-hosting these or using another service, I would be scared if that would increase our cost by a lot.
Yeah, so we're not planning on building our own service. And we are paying attention to costs. We're talking to these service providers, like with the Cloudflare Stream, for example, whether or not it would be available to us under Project Galileo, which means that Cloudflare would bear the cost. So similar things with other people that we would make contact with. So
I see. Okay. And then I just put a reference to a Python package that does password strength determination. So I seem to be listening here to maybe people determining or trying to invent their own, but there's a widely used package available for that. So hopefully,
yes, and we are using that package.
Okay, great.
All right. Does the floor is open. Does anyone have anything that they would like to discuss on the video streaming question?
As an additional set of requirements, I mean, would one of them for us be to either encourage or discourage the use of our videos to train AI models and implement a mechanism to either encourage it or discourage it?
So I raised this with the IETF Trust 2 years ago, quite some time ago, about that, and their view was nothing to see here. So until such time as the IETF Trust considers that there is some form of AI-related IPR issue here, I think it's something we're unable to act about, really, because we need that guidance from them around the licensing.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting to act, but to have some consideration for having a lever, because what we're kind of talking about is potentially to prevent it, but maybe we want to swing the pendulum all the other way, which is we want to have certain set of features that makes it easier or encourages kind of it, and making sure we're not locked in either way with whatever choice we have.
Okay, I think that's possible, but I think because we're using multiple services, we potentially already meet that bar. But I hadn't thought of it that direction. No.
So I'd like to have a little bit of discussion around the idea of us providing all of our video content just for download, in addition to providing it via a streaming service. Should we just make those bits available by HTTP just as a file download, or by rsync, or some other mechanic that looks like that? And if we did so, what are the constraints, if any, that we should put on these?
Well, one thing that occurs to me, if we are going to make our raw blobs available for many of the work products we make available as raw blobs, we have some easy way to tie our licensing to it in line in the file. I'm thinking our RFCs or IDs, some of the slideware and kind of whatnot. And so would we have an approach to make sure that the video files we have are not naked without licensing on them?
Does recital of the note well, is that enough?
You mean in the video itself?
Yep.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
I don't think it is. I think videos are licensed in a particular way, so we would need to consider adding a licensing, message in the video stream to the front of the videos. Then that might be something that's actually pretty straightforward to do with automated tools.
For video going forward, would we re-inject something into that and rebuilding past video?
I don't know. I don't think it's that difficult, but the question is whether it's worth our time.
Yeah.
Since we're doing a requirements drill, again, I'm just rereading the bulleted list. Implicit there to me seems like the same UI experience we have with through either Meetup or YouTube. Would that need to be captured somehow as well?
So there's a hint towards that with talking in the bullet lists about being able to scrub and to share links to a particular point in the video. So the just the general feature set that you would expect from a playback service right now is implicit. The level of detail that we would make that more explicit, I think, would ramp up as we discover what the capabilities of the other playback services look like. Anyone else have any comments?
Hi, I had a question around the licensing and copyright side of stuff. I believe it was raised on the mailing list as well, but if we distribute the videos over BitTorrent, then what would happen is everyone who downloads it is also a seeder, and they're sharing the video, possibly even after the IETF would like it to be removed. Is that a concern?
So to date, it hasn't been. The IETF opens in a very open fashion, right? An aggressively open fashion. And the artifacts are designed, that we create, are designed to be permanent artifacts. These videos that we're talking about are the majority of them are of meetings like this one that are contributions to the process. This one's a little bit odd that we're not working on standards, but the IETF interim meetings or the recordings of actual sessions at full IETF meetings are things that we do expect to persist. And I don't think that we have concerns about being able to tell anyone that has taken a copy of, for example, it's similar to if somebody has RFCs on their own hard drive and we ever wanted to take down an RFC, we take down the ones under our control, but anything that someone already had a copy of is not our issue.
I'll add that because of the way that we make our videos available, while BitTorrent makes it easier for people to seed and share it, we're not doing anything to stop people sharing those now and getting access to them. So that people do have them in certain ways and already are doing that. So we've made them available to people, for example, given them to people and things. So we already have that risk there. And I'm not aware that we've ever withdrawn a video. So ours is a publication model, not really a sort of a limited licensing model. So I'm comfortable with that.
Got it. Thanks for the replies. Just in the document, it said that it needs to have a reasonable mechanism for potentially removing content. So just bringing that up.
Wait, could you clarify what document you're reading that says we have to be able to remove it? Perhaps looking at
This is our notes.
Note.
The notes for this session, there's a bullet in there when we were talking about streaming services that we are looking at using. Like right now, when we use YouTube, if we start looking at somebody else for the things that we're in control of pushing, one of the considerations we're looking at is the ability is to take it back, to take it down.
That's. I didn't know that note was in there. I do think that's something we need to discuss, actually, whether there is a need to ever withdraw or remove video. Because as Raghu points out, that does change the nature of services we can use.
Miria has made some comments in the chat. Mary, if you're able to send audio, please do so. Otherwise, I'll relay.
I mean, I was just thinking out loud. It feels to me that just putting the content somewhere wouldn't be the normal use case. People usually want to watch the video, scroll forth and back, and or share a certain point in the video or whatever. So that would really kind of just be a fallback mechanism. There's no other way people can access the video. So maybe we should just work on making it easy to access the videos in a useful way. The other thing I was wondering about in the chat was we should make sure that all our resources are openly available, and maybe that's the only way to actually ensure that for sure, because otherwise if you host it somewhere, you always depend on the users terms of that other service, right?
Yeah, to build off what Miria is saying is, I think as we explore this, it's important to understand what the MVP is kind of here. We have an approach A. We've committed to continuing with approach A, is what I heard, and we're talking about potentially other candidate approaches, B, C, D, kind of, et cetera. What would motivate us spinning those up? So what would be the A and B? So we already have A. If we spin up B, what are the properties we need to hit in alternative B or kind of C that we already aren't getting in A, just to make sure we have the acceptance criteria for kind of saying we're potentially done or we can evaluate the candidate solutions.
Yeah, and I put that slightly differently, that B isn't what we don't have in A, it's potentially what we do have in A that we also want in B. You know, one of the things that we want to avoid is us building something that, for example, allows you to search, allows you to rate, allows you to create lists of, you know, all of that sort of stuff, that the management things that, you know, the self-service stuff that goes into YouTube. So that, I think, perhaps slightly more important than the things that we don't get with YouTube, which the only thing we're concerned about is logins so far.
Right. That's thank you for clarifying that, because as I've been hearing the mix and match, what it sounded like was everything YouTube does, we need all those features we had, but no login. And that can't exactly be right. I would hope not. So I just want to tease that out, because we're mixing kind of solutions and technologies kind of with requirements at the same time. And I'm having difficulty kind of keeping up without crisply converting the technologies we're talking about implementing with the requirements we're trying to satisfy.
So I think to a degree that is true, that in the first point, that we are looking at something that would be the equivalent of YouTube, that provides that same level of functionality without the logins. We're also looking at broader distribution of the videos through something such as, you know, bulk download or BitTorrent or something that would allow other people to put them onto other services or to do things with them, so that we don't then have to build all of the distribution system ourselves, or we don't have to feed all of the distribution system ourselves. You know, it would be ideal, for example, as people know, there are concerns sometimes about whether YouTube is accessible from within China. It would be ideal if, rather than us having to identify a Chinese equivalent of YouTube and feed the videos into that, if we were publishing the video somewhere and they were automatically picked up, you know, and put into some of these other places by community members, that would make life easier for us, I think.
Not passing kind of any judgment, because I don't understand how to bend this. What I just heard is we have a new requirement that we got to make sure that users in China have an alternative way other than YouTube to kind of get videos, instead of talking about BitTorrent or kind of HTTP, right? I just want to know what we're engineering towards, because I fear we're going to be led down a path of just a particular technology unless we can actually evaluate the reasons why we chose that technology to hit those requirements.
I think that's a good question. I think that's the purpose of this conversation, actually, is to help with that. So let me put that in two ways then. So we have two options here. although they are not mutually exclusive, so we could be doing both of them. Option one is that we find an alternative to YouTube that is very, very similar to YouTube, and that doesn't have the login requirements, and we publish videos to that so that people can continue using it in the way they're using YouTube, but without those the login requirements. And that, by doing that, that provides all of the add-on functionality that people might need in order to access videos, such as, you know, search things, video scrubbing, all of this kind of stuff. The second thing that we're talking about is whether or not to make our content more widely available through some lower level mechanism, so that other people can start to do things with it and put it in other places. And so those are, and is there a potential by doing the latter that we solve some of the problems with the former? Because with the former, are we simply going to be playing whack-a-mole, where we have YouTube one time, but YouTube now, you know, has a problem, so we then say add on Vimeo, and imagine like in 2 years' time, Vimeo adds on logins, and we have a problem there, so we then add on another service, you know, and it goes like that. And by potentially doing option B of making our stuff available through something like PeerTube or BitTorrent or something like that, would we avoid that whack-a-mole problem? Does that state it, I think, clearer for you, Roman?
Yeah, I think we should just continue talking about it. Because I think there's different equities, and I think that even if we agree that we have a direction here, I don't know whether that's consistent with the divergent opinions posed on the mailing list. So I just want to make sure before we embark on this, to Paul's comment, that this could potentially be expensive, either in kind of hosting costs or effort required to kind of do this, that we know what's good enough or know what the target kind of is.
A question, if we know, I saw the notes we know how much data we have, which is around 2.5 terabytes. Do we know how many watch hours we get per month or year, so we can estimate bandwidth costs potentially?
Mute. Still muted.
I didn't hear Robert if you were talking.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I muted. So that's in the notes, Raghu. 2024, we streamed 600K minutes out of YouTube, at least. So I think this is going to be an ongoing conversation. I don't think we're going to be doing anything this week. But continuing the dialogue going forward now and perhaps through 123 will be the right thing to do, getting the kinds of clarity that Roman was talking about, and gathering more information from the existing streaming providers so that we have a better idea of what the option space looks like. We have 10 minutes remaining. It sounds like we've plumbed this conversation for what we can get out of it during this call. Does anybody have anything else? I'm not cutting this conversation off. If anybody has any other ideas, feel free to continue. But if you've got something else that you would like to bring in as in any other business, now would be a good time.
So not in any other business, I would just highlight what Kasara said, and I think this reinforces a little bit of what I was saying, is that there's the transport technology, then there's the video player, and this is a little bit of, we want everything that YouTube does, and so what's the UI? Is it skipping? Is it search? Kind of the rest of it. If we're looking for alternatives, we need to, with a higher fidelity, enumerate what that UI piece of it is, in addition to the raw media.
Anyone have any other comments? Any other business? Otherwise, I think that we're done for today. The next call will be at its regular position during the month. It's already available in the data tracker. Remember that there are links on the meeting upcoming page in the data tracker that you can subscribe to put future instances of these calls on your calendars. Thank you again for taking the time to have these conversations. They're hugely valuable to us, and hopefully we will see you on next month's call and on the lists between now and then. All right. Thanks, everyone.